Stuart Smith.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, as this is the first opportunity I've had to speak in the House since Cyclone Pam, I'd like to just take a brief moment to acknowledge the hardship that's gone on for the people of particularly Tāna Island. In my electorate there's a close affiliation with Tāna Island, with a lot of the recognised seasonal employers workers have come from Tāna Island and has been quite devastated there. And I note, Mr Speaker, that there is quite an effort going on in Marlborough to put together a 40-foot container with building materials and with generators and other things to help those people get back on their feet. So they make a valuable contribution to our economy, and their work in turn takes a lot of valuable contribution back to their own GDP, and I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge that, so thank you. Mr Speaker, the Social Security Clothing Allowances for Orphans and Unsupported Children's Amendment Bill. It's a great pleasure to speak to this, and Tracy, like everybody else, I would like to pay tribute to you for putting this together. It's a fantastic bill, and it is a really important issue to bring forward to people. And unfortunately, I wasn't on the select committee that looked at this because I wasn't elected into Parliament at that time, but I am now on the Social Services Select Committee, and I really am enjoying the work that we do there, and so I look at this with different eyes than I would have done prior to the election, but so thank you and well done. I'd also like to say, Mr Speaker, as part of my election campaign, I spent quite a bit of time going around places like Salvation Army, Bread for Life and Bernardo's, and looking at the sorts of issues that this bill attempts to cover. And it is quite a really big issue out there when these sorts of people, because of this bill, we really are talking about unsupported child's benefit, which is only available when the family breaks down, and who knows what sort of circumstances that have gone on behind that. Perhaps the parent or parents have gone to jail or something like that, or the orphans benefit where the parents have died or cannot be found. And that's a pretty traumatic thing to go through for a child, and then to have them supported by their kin or as kin carers. There's a heck of a lot going on for them to put up with and to adjust to then go through financial difficulties as well would be pretty traumatic, and this bill attempts to alleviate that, and so well done on that. I note, Mr Speaker, that there is no income or asset test for this particular benefit, and I think that's an important point, that the families that are going through this don't have to go through the added difficulties of having to apply for that. But this particular bill is trying to fill another hole, I realise that, but I'll come to that a little bit later. Also note, Mr Speaker, that the child automatically qualifies for a community services card, and depending on how the benefit's applied for, there may well be an in-work tax credit for some of the beneficiaries, which I think is also a very good thing to do. There's been quite when we're talking about kinship carers, we're really talking about quite often grandparents, and I thought for a moment just turn our mind to that. It was a common practice for grandparents to have quite a role in bringing children up in the past, perhaps 2 generations ago, and that really has changed a lot today. And I think what the big difference we note today, when a grandparent is looking after and bringing up a child, they'll be much older than they would have been 2 generations ago. People start their families now in their late 20s and 30s, and sometimes late 30s, whereas going back 2 generations ago it would be in their 20s. So there's a much bigger age difference between the grandparents and the grandchildren, and that's pretty difficult sometimes to deal with. And having 3 children of my own, I know how difficult it can be without being a grandparent trying to look after those. Mr Speaker, when we're talking about clothing allowances in particular for young children, it's being a parent, as I said, I know how hard kids can be, particularly boys, on their clothes, and it is an expensive business trying to buy school uniforms for them and keep that up to date, let alone all the other clothes they wear, sports uniforms and all that sort of thing. But in regard to the bill being pushed out to 2018, or the implementation of it, when you're talking about gathering tax from taxpayers and redistributing it and to people in need, or to provide the goods and services that governments do on our behalf, we really have to walk a delicate line. If you go too far on the tax and tax people too heavily, they will put too much effort into trying to minimise their income tax liabilities, and that has been shown many times around the world to have a perverse effect on the economy and drag the economy down and hold everybody back, and we can't do that. Being in government and being leaders and being people and members of Parliament, we have to make tough decisions about how we balance out the needs of people and our ability to pay. The demand for government funds is limitless, but our ability to pay is very much limited. And we have to take those things into account when we pass laws. And the government is quite rightly taking a sort of a whole of government approach and looking at its welfare policies and how they might be implemented. And I think that's a really smart thing to do. So that's why there is a delay. And we really need to do that properly, because we simply bolting more things on in an ad hoc manner is really not good government. And that's what is driving this bill, or driving the implementation of this bill, I should say. Mr. Speaker, I noted before Poto Williams talking about whānau ora and the other sorts of policies that go around. Those are fantastic policies, and they're all going around to hit the specific needs in different ways. And I think like the likes of children's teams is another policy that's working very well in that way, and I'm proud to say in Marlborough, which is the 4th place in New Zealand for children's teams to be introduced, I believe it's going to work very well, and it will help in this sort of area, particularly because often those children will be the ones that will need those services. And I've said, when I was going around those various community groups, it struck me that there is quite an overlap in services, and often those people will grab a bit of service from here and another bit from another area, and it's not necessarily in the best interest of that particular child. And so thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I think having an overall approach is needed. This bill will, well, I'm certainly supporting it, and I think it will go through, and that the delay is needed because of the policies being all balanced up and making sure they all work together. But I do commend you, Tracy, for your hard work that you've gone into it, and it's a great pleasure to actually commend this bill to the House. Thank you.
Members, this debate has concluded. The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Social Security Clothing Allowances for Orphans and Unsupported Children Amendment Bill, second reading.
This bill is set down for committee stage next sitting day. Call on members. Order of the day.